Dave Meltzer has a column, which I'm sure you were aware of. And when we were down there, I read it one night. It says the hardest job in professional wrestling goes to Bam Bam Bigelow and Pretty Boy Larry Sharpe for having to work with the Ultimate Warrior every night.
Down there, yeah.
Yeah.
What are your early memories of Warrior down there in Texas?
He was down there and got along with him. Of course, impressed with his body. And all he did was cry that he wanted to come to New York. I want to come to New York. I want to come to New York. I want to come to New York. Well, finally, he came to New York. And then in this very town, him and I, Phil Collins, shot a music video.
Right.
And the studio was brand new. The first thing he did was take his boots out of his bag, put them on a brand new carpeted floor, and paint them right around the carpet. And I'm like, did you forget where you fucking came from? You know, it was, and all he did was whine and bitch and moan. You know, earlier in the day, he was up, he filmed Kathy Lee and Regis at the time. You know, hopped in a limo, come down here. There was nothing hard about it.
Right.
It was going to be like 2 minutes in the ring. And, you know, just had to whine and complain the whole time.
A lot of people say he's very hard to work with and a prima donna, so I guess so. A lot of other guys came through these doors, not at this particular building, but at the Macho Factory. Let's talk about some of them. Raven.
Yeah.
Scott Levy. What are your early memories of Scotty?
Scott was he wanted to be superstar Billy Graham. You know, that was his idol. And he had the body. I don't know if you've seen pictures of him early on. And he could cut a promo like Billy Graham. He had Billy, you know, down to a T. And, you know, he was a hard worker, had a good body, and he had a bankroll. So, you know, he went to Portland and, you know, staked his own claim out there. And he could afford to stay there and pay his dues, where a lot of people couldn't go and survive on what the wages were.
His parents owned I think his dad was involved in the newspaper industry or something.
Yeah, something like that, you know. But Scotty, you know, never wanted for money. And that being the case, it makes it a little bit easier.
So you saw the potential in him early on?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts of his career in the business? You know, he went on to become Raven and a big fixture of ECW.
I'm glad he did well.
Gary Wolf, Pitbull Anthony.
Yeah.
Pitbulls.
Gary's a great guy. He still comes around and helps her once in a while. It's always a pleasure to see him. Took him and Anthony to New Zealand a couple of times. And unfortunately, people got in their head like they got in Bigelow's head. And they decided that they were going to do better off on their own. Now, you know, Anthony's not here to defend himself, but if you talk to Gary, he'll tell you that was one of the biggest mistakes he's made. But everybody makes mistakes.
Right.
You know, am I going to hold a grudge against him? Of course not.
Chris Candido.
Chris, I'm missing. You know, his grandfather was instrumental with him. And Chuck and I were good friends. I had some good matches with Chuck, considering the age difference, because he was pretty old at the time I was breaking in. But that being said, you know, when Chris came around and he said, you know, Chuck's my grandpa, blah, blah, blah. And he was, you know, he was a very hard worker and he had good work ethics. And, you know, it's just a shame what happened to him.
Balls Mahoney?
Balls Mahoney. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy.
What was that?
Just being Balls Mahoney.
Just the gimmick, you mean?
Look. John is the kind of guy, he can make you mad, but when you see him, you're happy to see him. You know, the last time he worked for me, he was the highest paid guy on the card. I gave him $1,500. Wow. He shows up 2 minutes before the place is done, and he's pulling a shopping cart with tapes and all kind of shit in it. And I'm like, John, I can't work like this. You know what I'm saying? I need you to be here. And, you know, he was like, I'm sorry. And, you know, by the end of the day, you like him again, but you just can't use him anymore.
How instrumental were you involved with the Big Show's training, Paul Hoey?
He lived right here in this town.
Bouncer?
Yep.
How did that come about? He wanted to get into the business? He came to you?
He had a backer that flew out here. I think they were, he's from Kansas City, I think, originally, or he played basketball for Kansas City, ended up in Chicago with this guy that had a karaoke machine business.
Right.
They read about the Monster Factory. They both flew out here. And, you know, you look at him and you know he's going to make money. But I never counted on how stupid he was.
Why is that?
Well, because he did. The problem with training someone like that, especially at that point in time, Bigelow had just went through and some other guys had just went through, and we would go out in town and everybody's patting him on the back, telling him he's going to be a millionaire, and he's going to be a millionaire just strictly because of size. Well, all that shit goes to his head, and he don't listen. If he would have listened, he could be a much better worker than he is now. I mean, look how limited he is. What does he do? Who does he wrestle?
Right.
He gets Stephanie to slap him around and makes a payday.
What were some of the things that you were trying to implement on him that he didn't listen to?
Just that you got to pay your dues. Don't be so cocky. We were in a place in Philadelphia one time owned by gangsters. Okay, and I mean real gangsters. The only two people that didn't have a gun on them was me and the Big Show. Okay, but they were all friends of mine. So we're sitting at the bar, and I got this little game, and I'm laying it out for him. And when he did it, well, during this part of the game, you do it with your eyes shut. And when you do it with your eyes shut, you hit a make-believe tree. Well, when he hit the tree, I cracked him in the forehead as hard as I could.
Right.
Okay? And everybody's just like waiting for shit to start. But he just sat there like a little kid. Didn't even say, that pissed me off, Larry. Don't do it again. You got away with it this time. Anything like that. He's just no balls.
Now, with these guys, did you have the same kind of contract you had with
No.
Bam, or you just
That was that. I gave up on the contracts because I want to get fucked out of them anyway. Why waste paper?
Okay. Tatanka. Memories of Tatanka?
Yeah, great guy, man. Loved having him around. Good work ethic. He just he was in Florida and bumped into Buddy Rogers in Lauderdale and said, I want to be a wrestler. And Buddy says, well, you got to call Larry at the Monster Factory if you want to make anything of yourself. And he worked for Bally's.
Okay.
$90,000 a year. Jumped on a plane, come up here for a tryout, went home, quit his job, turn around and come back. And that scared me. I'm like, dude, you quit a $90,000 a year job to try to be a wrestler? I thought I was fucking stupid.
Right.
But he made it work. I mean, he worked hard. He did everything right.
Is there anyone that you turned down to train that you wish that maybe you didn't?
Yeah, there is a guy that I turned down.
Who's that?
I don't know his name, but I can tell you the story.
Sure.
He came in with his father, and he didn't have any talent. And his father laid out, I was charging $1,500 at the time. He laid out 15 $100 bills on